And welcome to Brown and White Ventures. I'm Jim Aroune, and this is the podcast that features Brown and White Ventures LLC. It is a new venture capital fund started about 20 months ago here in Western New York to help bring new opportunity to startups in our region. It is a venture capital fund formed by alumni of St. Bonaventure University and friends of that institution. It is focused on manufacturing and tech, healthcare and medical services, startups that are founded by women and minorities, and it is also seeking to deliver funding for startups in the footprint of the institution, that being Western New York, upstate New York, northern and western Pennsylvania. And we continue this podcast series so that you get to learn more about the portfolio companies that Brown and White Ventures is investing in, as well as venture capital and investment in startups from all perspectives. But today, we have a fantastic perspective coming from John Erbland, who is the founder of Paradigm Emissions Technologies based in Rochester, New York, and one of the portfolio companies of Brown and White Ventures. John, we're glad you're with us.
Thank you very much, Jim. Great to be here.
Your startup story is fantastic. You are an entrepreneur by nature. You are also someone who has worked in many different ways. Mm-hmm. Before we get to Paradigm, how did you get here as someone who's starting up a company, considering that you're not just out of college?
Well, that's a great question. How did I get into this situation, right? Let me start way back the way I was raised. Jim, I was raised, grew up in a military family. I was one of 8 kids, and my dad had gone to the U.S. Naval Academy and then commissioned in the Marines. And we moved all over the world. Grew up on Marine Corps bases. And this whole experience, I think, just taught me, obviously, teamwork, moving with a large family all the time, taught me to be resourceful, taught me to, it kind of provided me with a DNA of discovery and exploring new places, obviously, in the world, but also exploring new places that experiences. And so I'm kind of driven to, trying different things and exploring different ways to succeed. And so that kind of provided me with a unique DNA, I think, that drove me to eventually, get involved in small businesses and entrepreneurial activities.
Outstanding. Let's Tarantino this a little bit. We're not going to go back to the beginning. Let's go to the beginning of Paradigm.
Okay.
And let's tell people what Paradigm Emissions Technologies' prime product and service is as you arrive with this company.
Sure. So Paradigm decarbonizes emissions. And if you think about CO2 and how much CO2 is created globally, it's over 20 gigatons created from various sources of carbon soot. We've decided to focus on the heavy-duty part of the market, which creates more than 2 gigatons of CO2. And we developed a device, a technology that uses plasma to decarbonize the emissions out of those heavy-duty fleets. And the net result is that we save our customers lots of money on maintenance. We eliminate the carbon soot that would normally cause damage on those engines. We save them a lot of money on fuel, and we reduce their CO2 footprint on their heavy-duty fleets.
And we're talking about diesel engines here.
That's correct.
Yeah. So we're talking about the heaviest of equipment, the heaviest of vehicles, the vehicles that are not only grinding up your streets or heading down your highways, but we're talking about equipment that does some of the heaviest work anywhere.
That's correct. Yeah, and if you think about waste hauling companies, if you think about public transit companies that run large transportation vehicles, utility truck companies, even stationary kinds of equipment like electric power generators use heavy-duty diesel engines to operate that equipment. And so, in fact, one of the new markets that we'll be looking at some point is the whole tremendous infrastructure that's being built to support AI data centers. Well, those data centers require a lot of energy, and they will be using a lot of diesel-driven power backup systems to support them. So, huge market opportunity for Paradigm.
Before we get into the mechanics of the actual technology, the one thing that struck us as we learned about your company the first time was that there's a socioeconomic aspect to the service that you provide, because what people don't recognize is that so much of this heaviest equipment, and we're talking about transit service buses, we're talking about a lot of the infrastructure work that is done in our largest centers,
Right.
that these are vehicles and equipment that is impacting most, neighborhoods and communities that don't have the highest socioeconomic standing, and the idea that this would enhance those neighborhoods just because neighbors and citizens would not be choking on the soot and the particulates, which we'll get into in a bit, that generally arrive from a diesel engine. That's part of this, and I think that's fascinating. How are you selling that to people?
Well, that's a great point. And so I'll start with in 2023, the EPA came out with a proposal to decarbonize inner city communities where there's a very, very high density of diesel equipment being used. And the real worry was that the fine particulate matter that come out of diesel engines is especially lethal to human life. And so they were very concerned about the high density of diesel used in inner city communities of color, and they're looking for a solution to attack the fine particles that exist there. And so we can have an especially high impact on those kinds of communities with our technology because there's a lot of public transit equipment there. There's a lot of construction equipment. I talked about power generators, waste hauling, snow plowing. All those kinds of heavy-duty fleets operate in inner-city communities.
Very densely done. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this plasma system. And we're talking with John Erbland from Paradigm Emissions Technologies, which is literally stripping all of these pollutants and converting them into, this is the amazing part, and I'll let you do it, but effectively water is coming out of these emission systems after the system does its work within diesel engines. Kind of give us the 10,000-foot view of how this works.
Sure. That's a great question. So the basic science for how to apply plasma to decarbonize emissions has been around for a long time. A lot of research has been done both in the U.S. as well as in Europe and in Japan and places like that to try to figure out how to commercialize this technology. Earlier attempts were all very unsuccessful at doing that. My partner and I figured out a way to design a very efficient reactor that we could then take to market and commercialize. And the way the reactor works is that we use high voltage to create a plasma field inside a reactor, or millions of electrons that are created inside the reactor. And as the emissions goes through the reactor, the plasma attacks the carbon molecules and actually decouples them or breaks them apart down to their atomic level. And so then you end up with atoms that reform in the form of benign gases like water and small traces of CO2, but mostly water. And so that's the whole process that we've been using. And again, we didn't invent the science. It's been around for a long time. We just figured out a way to design a very efficient reactor and system to be able to commercialize it.
And so this sits within the engine compartment of a standard diesel vehicle?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Would it be fair to say it's sort of like a catalytic converter?
It's something like that. Yeah, it would look very similar to a catalytic converter, but functions very differently than a catalytic converter.
Sure. Well, John Erbland has plenty to tell us about Paradigm Emissions Technologies' primary service here. This system through plasma that strips particulates, pollutants from diesel engines and makes it a cleaner world around them. We're going to learn more about that here on Brown & White Ventures after we learn more about Hello Package. Hello Package offers relief for busy property managers. A new company establishing Secure, accessible on-site space for convenient local package handling for residents and drivers. It continuously onboards and trains residents and delivery drivers, ensuring smooth operations and clear communication. Now, residents that use Hello Package get delivery alerts, and the system securely stores packages with controlled access and computer vision and monitors drivers to address residents' shipping needs. Residents retrieve packages from Hello Package, and this system tracks every interaction to ensure residents' satisfaction using analytics to continually improve service. Hello Package is a portfolio company of Brown and White Ventures. You can learn more at hellopackage.com. John Erbland has worked with Paradigm Emissions Technologies, but he's worked with a lot of companies. A little bit more about your background and how you got to the startup that you created.
Sure. So when I graduated from high school, I was living in Wisconsin. My family moved back to Europe again, and I came back east and went to St. Bonaventure University for my undergraduate work, and graduated with a degree in economics, and went to work for 3M Company out of college, undergrad school, and got involved with sales and marketing. So that was my first professional job out of college, and went from 3M Company to Eastman Kodak Company to Xerox. So I worked for some large companies along the way, primarily in sales and marketing, and then eventually at Kodak I got involved in running a manufacturing division. So I started branching out from sales and marketing into other more operational kinds of responsibilities. Left Kodak, went to Xerox, spent a couple of years there, and then I decided to get involved in small businesses. So I was hired as the CEO of a small manufacturing company, an injection molding company that made molds and parts, and moved from there and ran a engineering company, and then left there and was hired to run a company in a similar space that Paradigm participates in. And the chairman of that company and I became good friends. We decided to leave there after a couple of years and founded Paradigm. So that's really how we got into a Paradigm and started this company, and have continued to grow it.
Your advice to someone who spends their time in big companies, but has they know within them the interest and really the passion to take on small business, to take on new business.
Right.
What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say that as you're working in a large company, the real benefit that you get is you learn a lot of great skills, management processes, manufacturing processes. You learn great sales and marketing skills, financial skills. And so within one organization, you can really build a strong portfolio of skills that can be applied to a small business. The other thing I would try to do while in that large company is to look for smaller organizations to run. At Kodak, we were made up of about 35 independent business units. And I ended up running a smaller manufacturing business unit and applied a lot of these skills I learned to a small business. That kind of provided me with the foundation to then leave a corporate world and get involved in running a small manufacturing company.
Now, you may have heard John mention St. Bonaventure University. He, like myself and many of the limited partners of Brown and White Ventures, Bonnie's alums, Brown and White Ventures does not move towards alums by nature, okay? We are looking to provide opportunity not associated necessarily with the school, with the institution. There is no connectivity. We are independent of the school. We just so happen to have found someone who is an alum, who is an entrepreneur, who is a startup person. And John, you know, if you want to speak specifically about, you know, coming from a small institution in economics that, you know, doesn't have all of the infrastructure as elaborate as the largest universities.
Right.
What did it provide for you?
It's St. Bonaventure.
Yes.
It really provided me with, again, it was a small university, and so you built great, social communities, great friends who I remain friends with today, 50 years later after graduating. And it provided me with great professors, the smaller class size, obviously you learn a lot, you develop strong relationships with the professors. And so I think, for me, that was a real advantage. I didn't have a family living here in the U.S. I live in Europe. And so, Bonaventure really became a close family for me too, as I went through that 4 years at Bonnie's.
And you met your most important person there.
And I did. I can't forget my wonderful wife, Debbie. Debbie was joined Bonaventure 2 years after, so she's 2 years behind me. And wonderful woman, met her there, and we started dating later in our time there. I should also mention Debbie founded the women's swim team at St. Bonaventure University, which today is a Division I swim team. So she's a wonderful, high-energy woman who has been a great partner with me over the years.
I will second that. She is a wonder. Yeah. Hi, Debbie. We're glad you're watching. I know sometime you will. What was the seminal moment when it came to your decision to address the problem that you seek to fix with Paradigm? Was it, were you sitting in traffic? Were you, you spend this time with three giant companies.
Right.
You get into small business, and then you make the decision, we're going to address this because it matters.
Right.
What was that moment?
Right. Well, I had mentioned earlier that I had been hired as the CEO of a small company. It was another startup that was in a similar technology space as Paradigm is. And so I really learned enough about the problem in the market of carbon soot for heavy-duty fleets to really stimulate my interest in really believing that we could solve that problem with plasma technology. My partner, who had been the chairman of that company, is a scientist, and so he really brought the scientific side to our team, and he had a lot of prior experience using corona and plasma in other kinds of applications. So between the two of us, my ability to really look at the markets and understand a problem and to come up with solutions for the problem, and his strength in the scientific side of things, we were just a great team and a great combination that allowed us to start our own company, right? And we became good friends. We bootstrapped the company, just had a lot of fun in the early days getting things going.
Let's go back to the system itself.
Yeah.
Because, as you explain it, we're going to have some video that we're going to show people. So it works in what way? If we were to watch this system process, the exhaust through the plasma system,
Sure,
it would do what?
So the way the system works as emissions flows into the reactor, there is an event called a corona discharge that occurs because of the high voltage being delivered into the reactor. The corona is like, if you could envision an electron avalanche of millions of electrons that are shooting off of the corona generators inside the reactor. That event creates a plasma event. Plasma is a very unstable environment for chemistry to exist in. And so the net effect is that as carbon molecules flow into the plasma field, those carbon molecules are unzipped. In other words, that we actually break them down into their constituent parts, atoms, right? And then through a series of conversions, those atoms reform not back to the original molecule, but in new molecules like water and a little bit of carbon dioxide.
So back to the catalytic converter comparison.
Yeah.
This is coming out of the engine,
mm-hmm.
and before it hits the exhaust system, it's going through this transformation.
Right. Exactly. Right.
And what arrives at the end of the exhaust process?
At the end of the exhaust is primarily hot steam. It's
really?
water that's about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
And
right?
and no soot as far as
Yep.
And you show this how when you introduce this system to people.
So the way that we demonstrate the effect is we use sampling cartridges to take soot samples of the emission stream, the exhaust stream, prior to the exhaust going into the reactor. And so you end up with we'll run maybe a 3-minute sample as an example in a cartridge. And you can see a very black, it's very fine filter paper inside the cartridge. You see a very black sample that is basically carbon soot, really thick carbon soot. Then we place another clean cartridge in the testing fixture, and we take another sample after the emissions has gone through the reactor, all right? And if you look at that sample, it's virtually white. And so we essentially have converted almost 95 to 98% of the carbon soot into these benign gases. We've also been testing with some large corporations like Ford Diesel, and Ford did some very, very meticulous testing of the technology, and they demonstrated that they could eliminate up to 98% of the carbon soot. They used some very sophisticated instrumentation to measure the results, all right? But they really did, that collaborated with what we saw in these sampling that we do.
It's amazing, considering you're telling me that more than 95% of that black, we see it as smoke,
right.
practically. I
Right.
mean, and we can get it on our clothes, and
Right.
we can certainly inhale it.
Right.
And that you're taking that away with
Right.
this system.
Exactly. Yep. That's the way it works.
Why wasn't this done earlier?
Well, again, the many attempts were made at trying to commercialize the basic science. I think the secret sauce that my partner Neville and I came up with had to do with a very efficient design of the reactor that could operate at very, very fast speeds and convert this carbon soot very quickly into the benign gases. We have 3 patents that have been filed on the technology, and so it's just a very, very unique design that allowed us to come up with a device at a low cost that required a low-cost power system to provide the high voltage into the reactor, and we cracked the code that way on using the science.
And we'll continue to crack the code of paradigm emissions technologies with John Erbland, the founder and CEO of this new Rochester startup, right after we continue Brown and White Ventures podcast with a message about CAV helmets. CAV Helmets is a dynamic disruptor in manufacturing, leveraging AI and 3D printing to produce custom-fit, top-of-the-line cycling helmets as safe as any other on the market. CAV also allows cyclists to take a single selfie of their head, and with that image, develop 108 measurements to produce a one-of-a-kind helmet for the serious cyclist. Its new Roan helmet model is taking the cycling world by storm. 3D printers produce nearly all of the helmet. CAV manufactures these helmets in a microfactory in Buffalo, New York, part of the commitment it made when it became a Cohort 9 winner in the 43 North Startup Competition in 2024. CAV has now moved all manufacturing to Buffalo as it prepares for its next step. CAV is a portfolio company of Brown and White Ventures, and you can learn more about CAV helmets at cavhelmets.com. Manufacturing is the basis of John Erbland's startup. Paradigm Emissions Technologies is up and operating in Rochester, New York. And starting a manufacturing startup is not easy in this climate.
No,
we can begin with tariffs, but there's plenty more than that. And as far as finding materials and finding support for it, it's not necessarily easy.
Right. No, it is. No, we, again, my partner Neville and I, we had a lot of connections as a result of my experience in the corporate world. I knew a lot of people in the area. Neville had been a professor at RIT, and then he had also started his own engineering firm. He was one of the foremost experts in vibration engineering in the world. So he had an engineering company that provided those kinds of services. So between the two of us, we knew a lot of people that we could really start bringing in to help with the company, mostly on a consulting basis. So that really kind of got us going from a personnel standpoint. From a funding standpoint, again, we bootstrapped the company with our own money. And then when we reached a high enough valuation for the company, we decided we could go out and start, selling equity And so we started with convertible notes and raised a bunch of money with convertible notes. At the same time, we were also raising money through grant funding. We were awarded along the way $250,000 from the National Science Foundation to develop our next gen technology. And so we had various sources of funding that we were bringing into the company. And then we decided to launch our first priced round too. And so through a number of various rounds of investment and funding, we're able to capitalize the company to start building this manufacturing capability. We don't intend to build a large manufacturing company, vertically integrated. We are using contract manufacturers, about 6 of them, mostly in New York State, all of them in the U.S., and they're providing components to Paradigm. We take those components, we do final assembly, QC testing, and provide tech support for our customers. And so that's kind of our manufacturing company model. Staffing it with some really great engineers and great sales and operational people, as well as using contract manufacturers for manufacturing.
Where are we seeing Paradigm on the road at this point?
So we have 6 heavy-duty fleets using our technology, and the Rochester Bus Company is one of our customers. They actually helped us develop the technology in the early days, do some initial customer beta testing. Lewis Tree Service is another customer. They have a large fleet of utility companies. Casella Waste is a third one. The County of Monroe is another important customer. They ran some pilots over the last few months, and they just decided to convert to a blanket order for us. So they're going to be rolling our technology out across the Monroe County fleet operations. And so those are some of the kinds of companies that we're working with.
And this is also arriving as the state of New York recognizes it's not able to completely meet its green goals.
That's
when
correct.
It comes to public transportation and elsewhere. And Paradigm stands in the landscape where as that reality arrives.
That's a great question. So I'll use RTS as an example. RTS has a fleet of about 250 large heavy-duty buses, diesel-driven buses. A couple of years ago, they bought 20 electric buses. They've been operating those for several years and decided to really focus more on diesel power as the primary powertrain for their fleet. And the reason for that is because electric, even though probably has long-term potential, doesn't provide the kind of power and range that a public transit company needs, right? And so they just ordered another 50 diesel buses as a way to continue to build their fleet. They have also purchased 2 hydrogen buses that they're currently experimenting with. And so they see hydrogen as a potential but long-term powertrain for the fleet. And so Paradigm's role in working with a company like RTS is to use our technology on their diesel fleet, which is by and large the largest part of their fleet, and to help them achieve net zero emissions without them sacrificing the power and range they need to operate their fleet.
This would obviously seem to be in the sweet spot for any federal efforts to reduce emissions.
Yes.
And your efforts to make that come to bear stand where?
Well, so at the federal government level, is that your question?
Yes.
So we're starting to work with the Department of Defense. As I mentioned, we received $250,000 from the Federal National Science Foundation to start building our next generation technology. We have been building connections with the Department of Defense, especially the Air Force, which has a base of 40,000 diesel engines in their Air Force fleet. And, of course, that is even smaller than the Department of Army or the Department of these other larger agencies. And so we see a big opportunity within the federal government to use our technology, especially in the Department of Defense, but also in other parts of the federal government, like FEMA could use our technology. Other kinds of parts of the federal government that operate large, heavy-duty fleets would use our technology too.
Speak to what would be perceived by those who wouldn't think a lot about diesel engines. There are people who believe we are going to remain on this path when it comes to fossil fuels because there's no transitionary point identified.
Right.
But working in that industry and attempting to improve it with the system that you have, speak to finding footing with your service at a time when there are still people that definitely do not want non-green technology to take the lead.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Jim, that's a great question, and we really we let our customers drive our behavior. We don't really worry about other influences on trying to, divert the economy from fossil fuels to other kinds of sources of energy. We let the market really tell us what they want, and the market's telling us that they want to use fossil fuel energy for a long, long time. And so we've decided that we can help the industry, which is based on fossil fuels, to decarbonize using our technology. So we kind of view ourselves as part of that ramp onto the highway of the future, where you have, diesel power, gasoline power, electric power, hydrogen power, these various powertrains operating together on the highway. Paradigm's right there with them, really decarbonizing those heavy-duty fleets while they use the powertrain of their choice.
So why does someone who has had success at big companies, who has had success at smaller companies, why at this stage of your career do you start something like this, again, in an uphill grind?
Right.
Because of the industry? I mean, why does this work for you?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons. One is when you spend so much time in a large corporate environment with somebody with my background, I talked about my DNA from the early days. You get a little restless. You get kind of you get tired of the bureaucracy and the the large corporate environment. And so I just felt that I wanted to start out. Or leave the corporate environment and start my own business. Be my own master, be my own boss, right? Really get something going that I would really get excited about and be able to employ people, help people grow their professional careers directly through a company that I founded, and to just experience the whole excitement of starting a company, growing it, and then eventually exiting the company and doing well financially. So that's really what motivates me and what motivated me to do this.
So this last question is for those watching who might have traveled down to Olean once in their life, or maybe more than that. Mm-hmm. Your favorite memory of your alma mater?
Oh, boy.
Now, and meeting your wife cannot be included in this.
There's so many of them. We had a gathering point in Allegheny, New York, called the Club 17. So that was one of the primary places we go to on the weekend and enjoy each other as a Bonaventure family. Of course, the environment down there is just fantastic, beautiful. There's an area called the Heart, which is up in the mountains. That was always, a place to enjoy. And I say my favorite restaurant in Olean was called the Beef and Barrel restaurant, right? Great beef on Camel rolls, and I still go there when I pass through Olean today. So, and of course, I guess the other thing that I remember fondly is, again, these friends that I made, the professors who provided me with the education that helped me launch my career, and so I just have a lot to be thankful for in having attended Bonaventure.
Well, John Erbland, congratulations on this new journey that you're taking. Right?
Thank you.
Bonaventure is the good journey, and a Bonaventure alum making that happen with Paradigm Emissions Technologies. We wish you all the best.
Jim, it's been a pleasure. I'm excited about this venture and with working with Brown & White Ventures to help us grow.
Thank you, John. We're glad you joined us on this episode of Brown & White Ventures. We have more coming for you. We'll see you next time.